My name is Mark Chisholm, and I'm with Accelytics and lead the search consulting and finance practices. And today I wanted to cover part 2 of the workforce planning series. This one's going to focus on talent alignment, but I wanted to revisit the prior deck that I showed in part 1, which was part 1 was focused on various techniques, but it did outline some trends and challenges. And I wanted to revisit that deck and sort of highlight some areas where I think today's demonstration is going to focus on. The first page really focuses on definition of workforce plan, which is really all about informing current and future demand for skills and people. And that is definitely relevant to today's demonstration on talent alignment. It also is going to touch on taking actions that builds on the existing workforce to meet emerging demand. Also, matching skills with opportunity was identified as a current trend, and this session is going to touch on that as well as changes in skill needs and closing the skills gap and so on. And really, today was going to focus on the connection between the organizational strategy with your workforce, with the workforce. And also, too, you're going to see data that's really disparate. And Anaplan being a business user-owned platform, it really allows business owners to get their arms around their data, bring that data into Anaplan, and use it for informing the planning. And you're also going to see the connection between upstream assumptions and downstream impacts, and also see how workforce planning integrates with organizational strategy, as well as the importance of scenarios as well. So let's move into a view of this talent alignment model. And let's go ahead and start here by looking at the honeycomb journey. In this example, you're going to see Anaplan has a variety of data, some of which is ERP focused, others that are human capital management focused. So being able to connect your HRIS or human capital management solution and your ERP into Anaplan, is an advantage. And also Anaplan being a platform can really gather data from any source. Then you'll see some long-range planning from a finance point of view, how that ties into talent strategy, as well as workforce planning and also compensation modeling, and how that ultimately flows through to the cost section of the P&L and ultimately out to the income statement. Okay, so just want to touch on that. And what you're seeing on this dashboard is a collaborative effort between finance and HR. And again, this speaks to Anaplan being that connected planning platform where different groups with different data needs, different ways of working, and different preferences in terms of how they want to see things can work together in a single platform and have each side inform the other to help improve ultimately the planning process, because they're connected together. And typical silos, there wouldn't be any kind of collaboration or communication, and as a result, the two silos would kind of miss each other, right? Whereas here, they're working together, and the assumptions of one potentially inform the assumptions of the other. So let's start by looking at strategic initiatives. So again, you have the ability within Anaplan to create new strategic initiatives. And here we've created one and again, you can do this directly on the dashboard just by creating a new initiative name and potentially entering the originator, which, could be populated automatically based on who you're logged in as. But in this case, we can enter the initiative name in the originator, as well as the summary of the initiative, the objectives, what do we do next, and any kind of notes on the decision. And so in Anaplan, you can just do that directly on the dashboard, fill out these details. And also, too, we typically see a lot of this work being done in Excel, because this is kind of like one half of the business case, which is the qualitative aspects, and then you have your financial aspects as well, which would result in what kind of investments required, what kind of return can we expect, or cost reduction, whether it be revenue upside or a cost reduction, both from a hard dollar and a productivity point of view. And then ultimately, once you have that data, you can then calculate things such as ROI, NPV, and payback, and also capture the more qualitative aspects. And again, we typically see this work being done in Excel just because of the diverse nature of the data. But Anaplan being what it is, which is a planning platform, you can actually replace that work in Excel and do it directly in Anaplan. So you can start by defining these different, these different strategic initiatives, and then you can look at, based on the initiative, what kind of skills would you potentially need for that. And I'm just going to make a couple changes here. So basically, what you're seeing on this dashboard is, the talent needs of that new initiative, right? And what you have the ability to do is do this by location. So, you might have different offices or different locations, manufacturing facilities, production, whatever. And there's, this new initiative that we've created called New Product that's flown through automatically. And you have the ability to kind of page through the different sort of types of roles you would have in your organization. So we have product engineering and so on, and we're going to focus on software engineering here. And you'll notice that we have a current complement of people, and for this particular role, you have both necessary and nice to have or preferred skills as well. And then ultimately that determines, based on the number of people, like what your skills gap is looking like. So, for AWS Solution Architect, we actually need need sort of nine skills, if you will, or 9 people that have those skills, 7 for risk and information control and so on. You can also see how the different locations are comparing to each other in terms of how this location is comparing to its skills attainment. And you can also see what sort of available resources are out there. And if you think about the type of data, this is very different than financial data, but it's all being handled by Anaplan. So both financial and workforce or operational data can be collected and housed within Anaplan and then used to better inform the planning process. So we have these different skills, and here you can see that, for software engineer, there's cloud adoption is growing. So perhaps this should not be a preferred skill, but more a necessary skill. And you can see that dramatically increases the skills gap. And we now have to look at how we want to close that. And potentially, we might need, more people to actually do that, right? And you'll notice that now we have a substantial skills gap. So, one of the challenges is really being able to, identify the emerging skills that are out there. And, you can't read an article today without hearing about AI. So, what you're able to do is kind of collect or sort of discover what skill trends are out there that are affecting your industry. And that'll require obviously some research. But once you do that research, and again, your Anaplan partner can help you with that as well, with gathering that information. And you'll understand sort of what trends and skills needs are out there that are ultimately going to eventuate in your industry. And then you can start planning, capturing that information, start planning for it. So now we know that because cloud adoption is growing dramatically, we need to have an AWS solutions architect as part of our software engineering group. And as a result, we're going to need, as a result of the number of FTEs that we identify that we're going to need, 29 of them. So, and this is where we can start looking at how we want to close those gaps. But Anaplan gives you the capability of identifying, those gaps and putting a quantity around them, so kind of what you're dealing with. So then if we look at our staffing plan, there's a few different routes that we can take. So you can see right now that, we've got sort of 3 different, aspects. We can train people internally, we can hire people externally, and we can bring on contingent resources to maybe fill the gap in the interim. And this is all going to affect when we can actually go to market with that new product, because you're going to need people to create it or build it, if you will, or at least go to market with it. And that's going to, when we can do that, is really going to determine, when we can bring these people on board and have them be productive. You can also see here that there are some assumptions around what's the qualified pool of people that potentially we could pull in for this. what's the cost to hire, how much time it takes to ramp, and there's a whole range of hiring assumptions that you can put in as well in terms of, by role, how much does it cost to hire, what's their ramping time, what's their cost to contract, and what's their contract lead time, and what's the skills details in terms of, like, if we wanted to train somebody up to be a solution architect, AWS solution architect, how much would it cost to do that? And so it's all about now putting we understand like what the talent needs are, but now it's understanding the financial impact of that. And that's where having a connection between your workforce plan and your financial plan is critical, because, you might take a different course of action if you find that, potentially you're not going to meet your profitability needs because you've got to bring all these people on and you've made a decision to hire externally as opposed to training internally, and the cost is going to be higher, et cetera. So having that critical upstream, downstream connection between those two groups is essential. And that's what Anaplan really provides. So, and again, you'll also notice too, up here, you have the ability to work across different scenarios. So we're actually going to take a couple different courses of action and then do a comparison between them. So for scenario one, let's assume we're going to go all internal. We need to actually hire people, or we need to train people. And you can see here that we can start, we've got 14 people available to train starting January. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to train them. We're going to train 14 people. And you can see we start sort of closing that gap, and it's going to cost us $93,000 to do that in January. Then let's continue the practice in February. And you can see just by hiring 14 people in January and training 14 people in January and 14 people in February, at a cost of $186,000, we can actually have the available capacity we need starting in May. So now you're talking about basically a 5-month lead time before you can go to market with this new product. And, you also, because, in Anaplan, are able to consider the market and competitive implications of having to wait 5 months. And should you maybe look at trying to go to market sooner, because we all know that first to market has an inherent advantage. So is there a way to maybe increase or sort of decrease that lead time? And this is one option. And again, in May, it becomes fully available, and it costs you only $186,000. But what's the cost of that time? So then, if we move into scenario two, hiring externally, right, to bring people on. So, if we take the same approach, right, and we hire 14 people in January, 14 people in February, and you'll notice that again we have that same sort of lead time, right? So, it costs us, a lot more, several orders of magnitude more. So does it really make sense to do that, where we didn't decrease our lead time by any number of months, and it's actually cost us more to do that? So potentially we might want to look at, another course of option, like what about contingent workforce? Well, if we hire 14 people in January and 14 contingent workers in February, you can see that we've actually shrunk that time to market by 2 months, like we're ready to go in March as opposed to May. And is there an economic benefit to the organization as a result of being able to do that? But keep in mind, it's costing us like $4.9 million to do that. But will that be more than offset by being to market 2 months early and having that jump on your competition, where potentially, you might grab a larger market share as a result of doing that? So again, just a couple of different options available. But again, you can see here that Anaplan is integrating financial information with workforce and also really the sales aspect as well, to help you understand, like, by hiring a contingent workforce to fill the skills gap, it's going to cost you more, but you get to market earlier. So again, just really the power of Anaplan, bringing these diverse areas together into a single platform. Very advantageous. Then if we look at our scenario comparisons, what you're able to do is really do a scenario to scenario view of what that looks like. And we can immediately see, like, scenario one, here's our spend by group, and here's our scenario two, and how those compare. And hiring costs and training costs and contractor costs of scenario two over scenario one, as well as headcount over time versus these two scenarios, as well as the mix of contingent versus full-time employees. and what that looks like. So again, this has just been a quick overview of talent alignment and how Anaplan can actually align your organizational strategy with your workforce planning needs and your go-to-market needs using this talent alignment capability available within Anaplan, and allows you to connect those groups together, and you can immediately see, and with the scenario planning, be able to see the impacts of making different changes and assumptions and being able to compare those two and help you make those trade-off decisions between cost of hiring contingents versus training versus length of time to go to market versus the market potential of that new product that you would potentially be able to launch sooner, but it'll cost you more, but is that offset by your potential revenue gains? So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you at the next session.
We hope you enjoyed this panel session. Be sure to check out more in our series. And if you're interested, be sure to hit subscribe and like so you can be the first to know about our next upload.